So should we get going? You ready, guys?
Yeah.
Ready. So to everyone who's joined, hello and welcome to the second instalment of Rocket Fuel. This is our exploration of creating future ready organisations and all the kind of elements of that. What we like to do is invite important guests with wise things to say. And this is definitely one of those. So I'm Emily, I'll be your host for the afternoon. Thank you very much for joining. As housekeeping, the chat is live. Becca is actually going to post a poll in a second, which you are very welcome to fill in. So we have some data about what you guys are thinking about. And before all of that, I just wanted to introduce you to Patrick, who is the CEO of Novia, and Vicki, who is the Chief People Officer. Our purpose is a really important lever in future ready organisation. Have an exploration of the work and really talk about, what are the tips and tricks of doing this? What have they learned on the talk about that, leave our lovely audience with some into what it takes to do this journey, and hopefully some stuff that you can start doing. And with that, for those of everyone here who don't know you guys, Patrick, I just wondered whether you could introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you care about at work.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting us, Emily, and it's great to talk to everyone around the purpose and the work that we've done, as you say, over the last 18 months. So, Patrick Mill, Group CEO of Novia Wealthtime, been running this business for about 2 years, and we'll talk about kind of some of the history to that. What's important to me? It's a people business. Financial services is pretty dull, and people will talk to you about, oh, is it money, is it commercials and stuff? But ultimately, it's a people business, and ultimately we have a big responsibility for our clients in terms of we hold their savings for their futures. We employ just over 300 people who are our business. So to me, it's about the people that work here, but also the end customers that we serve.
Perfect. And then Vicki, tell me about you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm Vicki Baker. I'm the Chief People Officer at Novia Wealthtime. Been there now 18 months, and loving it. Lots to do, lots to talk about today, but love it that the CEO talks about people business. Obviously that's all about what I do and what I love, and I guess we can talk about in financial services assets and money and everything else, but the people are the assets, and when they walk out the door you don't have anything. So that's what I care about, and that's what I'm here to talk about today, I think. So
great. So set the scene for us. You Novia Wealthtime, you came in 2 years ago, that's right? Right?
Yeah, well, although the journey started a bit before.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, I've been working with ANACAP, our private equity backers, for about 4 years on a investment thesis. We bought 3 businesses, Wealthtime, Novia and the Financial. When we took over Novia, which was April 21, we brought in a new executive team, one of which was Vicki, and we started the journey. Those 3 businesses were great businesses. They were founder-owned businesses. They were all startup businesses, so had grown extremely well. The founders had done a really good job, but clearly we wanted to move that business on. I'm sure we'll talk about how we did that. I suppose it was a unique set of circumstances. So it was 3 businesses coming together at the same time. What we wanted to do was to create a new business that was the best bits of all 3. So it's not a normal acquisition where one business is coming into another. That, you know, it was a unique set of circumstances with a new executive team, 3 businesses coming together, just wanting to be the best business that we could. So that's kind of setting the scene from my point of view.
So Vicky, you joined 6 months later. About that, what was attractive to you about joining Novia Wealthtime? Why?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Yeah, why did I do this? No, I mean, it's a huge opportunity for change. And as Patrick's just said, you know, we had 3 businesses we were bringing together. That creates something that I'm really interested in around, you know, bringing different cultures together, looking at how we can get the best, the unique selling points of each of those businesses and make that all work. It's not about throwing it all out and starting all again. It's about, you know, what are the best bits and how do you propel those, and then some of the things that you want to leave behind. So there was a real opportunity. I came from a much bigger corporate organisation, and I felt that this opportunity had one, investment and backing. It wanted to grow, not just, you know, in terms of some of the technology we were putting in and some of the innovative things that we wanted to do, but actually from a people perspective, it wanted to bring in new capability, join that with what was already there in terms of the knowledge and experience from some of the, you know, the businesses that AnaCap was bringing together, and that was just a real opportunity, and the timing as well, just coming out of what was a really tough couple of years in COVID. You know, a lot of us thought about what can we go and do next. So I was having those thoughts, and this opportunity came up, and it was great to take. So no looking back.
Good. So set the scene. So you come in. You've been around for a while.
Ages.
Ages. 6 months. What was the catalyst for thinking about purpose? Why were you thinking about that's an important thing to do here?
Well, I'll start. I'm sure Vicky will add to this. It started through Vicky's interview process. So Vicky and I talked about the fact that we wanted to create a different financial services business, and that actually there was, you know, let's be honest, financial services has a certain reputation. You know, I've seen, you know, a number of surveys where they're just below double closing salespeople. So trust was pretty in terms of there is a different way, you know, transparency, being authentic, and that's what we wanted to create. Clearly, he's an extremely capable individual, but there had to be an alignment to that, and that's why she came and joined, and that's why we wanted, and so that we wanted to be a purpose-led business, and we can talk about some of those things, and I suppose just to alleviate any fears of anyone that I'm not a commercial CEO, good businesses are more valuable. To this in terms of, you know, people will pay for a good business that serves its customers well, looks after its staff. You know, they are hugely much more valuable than other businesses.
So, okay, so both from a heart perspective and actually from a head perspective, this was the way. Okay, Vicky, what about you? Tell me about your purpose journey.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, you know, we talked about why join, and the alignment between sort of Patrick and I and what we were thinking about, what we wanted to create, and it was, you know, something that you never know what you would kind of coming in to jump into, I guess, in terms of, you know, previously I'd tried different things around values and culture and behaviours and all of those things. I think actually having a real belief that purpose makes a difference to a business, it makes a difference to the people if it's authentic and people can get behind it, And again, like we'll talk about the process we went through, which was lots of learnings along the way, and lots of learnings for me, and lots I would do differently, and everything else. But you know, that had to be strong, and truly, you know, why I joined the organisation. But also making sure that, you know, there was alignment there from the CEO, and that, you know, we were going to have the freedom to go and do this. So I think, you know, the opportunity was there, both for the people and myself in the role that I played, for the culture, and it was going to be sustainable. Wasn't just a short something that we will live through the organisation, and
the organisation, you've got this ambition. I just want to skip forward.
Key behaviours from that underpin pursue potential together. One was around seeking opportunities, and that really was about working with curiosity and ensuring that you can really pursue potential through other lenses, and seeking opportunities, whether that's externally through customer lens, internally through the employee lens. The second was nurture one another, and that isn't spoon feeding each other, that is much more around lifting each other up, supporting each other, togetherness in pursue potential together. And then the third one is simply get going, which actually was a lot to do with the three businesses, where they were very entrepreneurial and had a lot of pace, and we didn't want to lose that. But at the same time, you know, seeking opportunities, what is it that your customer or your advisor or your employee needs? How do you ensure that everyone's kind of included in that, and you have the support to do it? And then you get going and experiment. So they all came together to pursue potential together.
So pursue potential together, obviously we talked about this word potential, and there was a lot of debate, hot debate about this word potential. But I want to know from your perspective, what's the magic? Why is this a brave purpose for an organisation like yours to
have? For me, it's two or three reasons really. One is that, you know, I've had a corporate background, and you know, purpose or values or something was something that was up on the wall, and it kind of sat over there. This purpose is strong because it's central. It is everything. That's what we stand for as a business. It comes into our decision making. So there's something about how it's positioned, the way it is. So without the words. I suppose we have lots of debate, as you talked about potential and other words. I think one of the things that we were really kind of focus on is that we have a number of stakeholders or a number of people, and what really resonated with us is that actually the potential can be this big or that big. It doesn't really matter, and it can be internal, external, third parties, it doesn't matter. So I think that because we wanted it to be so central to the organisation, it needed the flexibility to be able to work with all stakeholders.
Particularly your clients, your customers, I should say.
Yeah.
So what do you think it means? What's the radicalness in it for the industry? What are you challenging with Pursue Potential Together for your customer? Or with your customers?
Well, I think again a couple of points for us is just around being authentic, being transparent, and that's with, you know, our third parties, our people, but most importantly with our customers, in terms of what we do and what we don't do, and that is just as important. So I think it is about just being open and honest with them. So that's pretty unique. And the other element for me is just the true authenticness of it, in terms of we do what we do. And we'll talk about this in terms of purpose a little bit later. we're not going to save the world. You know, we're a financial services business. You know, what we do is really, really important, and we can help create that for individuals, but just realizing what we are.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, talk about the debate around potential, it's so broad, and that's what was kind of, were we comfortable with that or not? But I think from a client perspective, it allows you to think about, you know, what's the potential in this investment that's going to, you know, send my kids off to university or let me retire or do anything like that, which is life-changing, right? It's really important. There's huge potential in that. The bit I think around authenticity is so important, because we couldn't be anything. We didn't want to try and be this, you know, we're going to do everything in the world, although we have a huge part to play in that. So there is a big community part, and our employees want to see that, our clients and advisors and customers will want to see that, and we are partnering up with in our foundation with other charities. But again, this is about not, you know, we'll come and do everything for you. This is about how do we work in this purposeful partnerships. And I think, again, purposeful partnerships around the potential that does, you know, in choosing certain things that we sponsor or things that we do for the chosen charity that we're doing, which is broader than our organisation, I guess, is the giving back. But it's not the saving the world piece, and we needed to have a real sort of clarity on that, and that's what was one of the things that kept sort of moving around a bit. But where we landed, I think all of our people as well, sort of internally, all of this touched every single person in the organisation some way or another, through, and we'll talk about them in a minute, the amazing culture club. But you know, that was truly important. So you have things that will work on the outside that is definitely to do with your purpose, and it is in partnership, but it's two-way, and it's not just what we will tell people we're about, it's about how we do this together, and that's why the together part was really important in our purpose.
Yeah, it's remember I was talking about avoiding it for we wanted to avoid in all cases any sense of arrogance. It was all very and that's as a financial service, because that's quite radical actually, to not it be about you. It's actually about the generosity of spirit that you have. So if we skip to the middle, are we in the middle now? Definitely not the end. It's definitely not the end. What has happened that through having a purpose, or maybe even through just the work that you did, what do you have now that you possibly wouldn't have if you hadn't had this purpose? So what is it about this purpose that's caused some interesting things to happen in your organisation?
Yeah, I mean, the discovering purpose was one of the things that I think I learned huge amounts from. So the process of, you know, getting people in the organisation to start thinking about why we exist. And I think a lot of that process then brought to the purpose itself, but the process of going through it was a huge amount of learning for us, and it gave us an in-depth look at the culture and what was important to people, why people stay, why people would go. So I think, you know, in that there's something that quite magical happened. And for me, as the chief people officer coming in out of a lockdown into a new organisation, like the depth of insight and, you know, who people are and what they care about and all of those things that are really important, that takes you months or years to actually get to, if you know, joining an organisation, happened much quicker as a result of this kind of piece of work, which I would say to anyone, that's really magical and amazing actually. And then there are lots happening in the organisation. There's things that are really intentional. So, you know, we use this in our decision making. Patrick's already talked a bit about that. But also then some of it happens organically. So what I love is when I kind of past a room or something, and you know, someone's talking about a certain project and they're using the language of the purpose to sort of hold that real, you know, well, how are we going to look at the new regulatory project, or how are we going to look at this risk from a purpose perspective? How are we going to go into our communications with purpose at the heart? How, you know, so I think it is happening organically, as well as some of the things that we put in place to start, because we needed some momentum from the start around some of our senior leaders and some of the projects we set them up to do to test it. So yeah, I mean, it's happening in some more purposeful and some more organically, which I think is great, because both so key and important, and actually the people need to own it and drive it, not, you know, the executive themselves, but we have a huge part to play as well in role modeling that all the way through.
So I want to talk about how, because there was lots of interesting things that happened along this little meandering path that we went down. So if we talk about the process, and you talked about the magic, some of the magic coming out of the process, I just want you to talk about what has your experience been of doing, well, before that actually, what was your experience of doing this kind of work before, and how does this contrast to how you set it up this time?
Yeah, I sort of touched a bit on it before. Patrick might have said posters on walls and things like that. And I guess we you know, went into this thinking we're going to do this differently to what I'd done before. And what I'd done before had mostly been in a corporate, you've got a milestone plan, this is how you're going to roll out kind of values or culture or anything else. In part that works, you know, you can sit as an executive and work through what's important to you and what's important to your clients and all those things, which, you know, has definitely some value in that. But in the past, you know, going then back out to roll it, even if we used Jampan and lots of the organisation in my previous companies had input, it just didn't, it was diluted. So when you went out, people were just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, is it that thing on the wall? And even in the induction process, it wasn't kind of embedded. So here, it's much more around, because it's 300 plus people, we touched every single person in the organisation around the why, whether that was through digital interaction of our culture club, who were all different levels in the organisation, different tenure, different experience, new people that had been there 10 years, people that were more senior, people that were in customer services, all different people. They were going out and asking different questions all the time. And then I think when you can see, is it this or is it that, you talked about potential versus maybe an opportunity in the words, people would come back and react and say, no, I really don't like that, and I really like this, and I feel really passionate about that. And you could feel the energy in the organisation, whether that was online or we put things up in the office so that people could scribble down their thoughts. And that, for me, was a different way of doing things. The experiment bit, I definitely was not, it wasn't just me. I've never done it like that before, but I guess it was like, in a way, an agile way of working. And, you know, it was a learning for me, but it was much stronger, the output we got, and then the reaction to it, compared to what I'd done in the past, which was a bit more of a kind of milestone. You know, you hit that, then you roll out, this is the next phase, this is the next phase, tick, tick, tick. And then sort of standing back and going, why isn't this working? Why are people not really catching this? Yeah, and it's showing through now. We've done 3 different engagement pulse surveys over the last sort of 6 to 9 months. And our employee net promoter score is continuing to rise over that time. And we have questions in there that are to do with our behaviours and purpose, and that's getting stronger. So our detractors, passive around, you know, the organisation and what it stands for is becoming much more positive. So you can feel it, and it's real and it's emerging. Yeah.
So I want to go back to 2021. So that fateful day when Vicky was like, Emily, come and hang out.
Yeah.
So what was it that took you, for you, Patrick? What made you go, yes, we can go this way? I have some degree of confidence that we'll end up where we need to go.
Yeah, that's a good question now, isn't it? What did I think at the time? So I suppose I covered a couple of bits of this. Really, the fact that actually there was an issue not only from the people into people, new executive, but also the people in the businesses that they needed to change. So we had to grasp it, and it was, it just felt like the right time. My experience very similar to Vicki in corporates, mainly top down. So mainly marketing led in terms of we need some buzzwords, can you stick them together because we need to go out and sell something, and no real buy-in, and so knew we could do it a different way. We clearly needed help, and you were fantastic in terms of helping us on that journey. But I think that Vicki and I saw an opportunity for us to do it a different way. I suppose at the time reasonably brave, and you talked at the beginning in terms of setting this up, in terms of there's some tips. Be brave is definitely, you can't be passive with this. You do have to be brave, and there is a little bit of, you kind of got to jump off the cliff and hope there's something that lands. You have got to be brave. I'm not sure it is about us being brave. There was a set of circumstances that allowed us to be brave as well.
Yeah. So tell me about the steps you took. Let's get really tangible. What did you do? Do you remember? Chris, do you remember what you did? So just in terms of process or architecture of how we made this thing happen together, what were the elements for you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so obviously talk to and us about what we were wanting to do and needed some kind of help to think about that bit more. Obviously we talked about, Patrick and I talked about it in the interview process, but we needed kind of some help to think about that architecture and what process we might go through, which thank you for helping us along that way. I think, having the setup of the culture club, which I've mentioned a couple of times, so this was different levels of the organisation, probably a group of about 10 to 12 people initially. And I remember you and I kind of going the first time we sort of sat together and said, okay, this is going to be about the why, and we're going to go into that. And the group going, I'm not sure I get this. And we were like, yeah, we don't either. We need to jump off the cliff together. So we set up the culture club, or they called themselves the culture club. And this group of people were given the space and the time to go and discover, basically, and we had to stand back a bit and go do it. But at the same time, in conjunction, we had the new executive team coming together, and we're also going, how do we discover what we're doing here? And we did our own kind of individual reasons, because that was really important. But also, as so the opportunity, also then we brought Culture Club and their insights and executive team and senior leaders together as we went, doing kind of demo sessions along the way. So Culture Club had done a lot of asking questions in the organisation on why they would come back. We would do our sessions, we would then come back as an executive team and Culture Club, and there are others that wanted to join sort of those sessions and start to play back some of that. So that was interesting in itself, because it felt sometimes like, are we making progress? Are we going to ask another question again? I think we need to go back and ask another question. And it was like, and Patrick and I have talked about this, our patience, the impatient bit of, can we get to a part? Are we nearly there yet? No, we need to go back. We need to ask some more questions, which actually in hindsight says we went really deep, and that's really important. But at the time you're like, are we getting there? Not quite. We need to go back. And so yeah, we went through that process a lot through kind of three months probably. But it was really important to give that culture club the space and the time with and us as well to have some of the coaching, and also, you know, the organisation was going through change, and they were almost the group that were what was happening to the wider organisation, that was happening to that group. So you could see then in that group, you know, who's engaged, who's not, who's really questioning how we go forward, who's finding it really difficult, and it was just a microcosm of the wider organisation, which was,
they called themselves the culture club, and sometimes we called them the Petri dish. So Patrick, for you, what were the important moments in this March?
So just kind of going along that journey, I think Vicky's right in terms of the business was going through an enormous amount of change, and I'll go back to the point, they were all founder-owned businesses. So founder-owned businesses tend to have leadership teams or CEOs that kind of, you know, because they're small, they're quite directional. And you know, the first thing we did was to go along and say, we believe in a purpose-led organisation, but the purpose needs to be co-created, and it's not a CEO thing. That's fine. But for them, was pretty alien. And you know, I know, Emily, you had this kind of a number of times, well, should we check in with Vicki and Patrick? You know, no, they don't need to know. So they'll just ruin it. So let's do it without them. And so I think the big kind of touch points were allowing them. Definitely, I found this personally quite difficult, the meandering. So, you know, I like delivering project plans that go like this, and oh blimey, we're slightly behind, let's get back on track and stuff. You can't do that because you will stifle creativity. You've just got to believe in the process, and you've got to believe that even if things are going slowly, they're going slowly for a reason. And that's quite hard sometimes, you know, or surely we've got a purpose by now, surely. So I think that was quite difficult for me personally in terms of, but really important. The next big stage for me was when the culture club then took it out to the rest of the organisation, and
Nail-biting moment.
Yeah, definitely a heart in the mouth. Oh, blimey, how's this going to go? And of course, they got various reactions to what's the point? To oh my God, I like this. I always say in most journeys, and this has been a journey, that there's always a moment. And Vicki and I were talking about this yesterday in terms of, so the first time that we went to Culture Club and talked about this, it was, why have we been chosen? What have I done wrong in the past? That means I haven't understood months. You know, we had all hands in October 21, and the Culture Club prepared a video around the purpose, and we were preparing for the event, and the first time that I saw that video, we were in the boardroom in Novia, and it really hit me in terms of, oh my God, what a journey. And it went beyond my wildest expectations in terms of, I would never have thought it was possible to go from taking an organisation or 3 organisations to a purpose that was that strong and that engaged, that had been created from the people. So that was definitely a moment. We then did the all hands, and there was so much excitement in the room around the purpose, and you know, what are we going to do with it? What's this going to do? And you know, clearly we're not all the way through the journey. You know, I believe that it is embedded, but not fully. You know, there's still times, and I talk about this quite a lot. So it's consciously embedded. So we think about, okay, so there's a decision. Let's think about our purpose. And when it's fully embedded, it will be unconscious, you know, so it will just be part of the way of life. But you have to go through that journey. So those are the kind of key moments for me.
So you talked about meandering. I love the meandering. I love a good meander.
Yeah,
I want to understand more about the unintended consequences of that, because there were moments where I could definitely feel you two being like, I can almost like it back into a Gantt chart now. Like there were, and not just you two, you know, the muscle of the organisation was definitely that we were fighting for the meander. What was the unintended impact of that for you? What did you see the advantage of the meander turning into?
Yeah, I talk about bravery, and that was definitely a bravery moment, really, because there was so much happening in the rest of the organisation, with new executive team coming out of COVID, people returning to the office, trying to bring three businesses together. We were trying to kind of engage with our advisors, engage with our audience. It would have been so easy to go, tell you what, let's just put purpose to one side. Let's go back and pick it up. But ultimately, we believe that was always going to be the catalyst and make the journey, you know, easier. But you know, as I said, there is no doubt there was lots of times like, yeah, Emily, can we get there, please? But I think the biggest thing that convinced us about the meandering was the culture club and the people, and you know, the things that they were struggling with and the things that were taking the time were real things, and actually I could see, and we could see the benefit of the meandering, and I think that you have to, if you're trusting a process and you're trusting the people, you have to allow that to happen, because you know, we could have killed it if, you know, Vicki and I had stepped in and gone, yeah, anyway, you've not got there. Here's the answer. It just dies. So there was a certain amount of bravery around that period. But one of the things you find is that actually you do find a rhythm with it. So it meandered, but you know, it would go slow, but then it would go very quickly because of that investment of time and energy meant that you could just go faster at this bit. It's just a hard one.
Because the interesting thing about Vicki, you touched on this, that yes, we were doing purpose, we were inventing a sentence, but really what we were doing was the discovery bit, you know, and using purpose almost like a Trojan horse to do the other bits of the maturity of the organisation. So can you talk to me a bit about that journey?
Yeah, so and again, Patrick sort of mentioned it around the reaction of you know, what you asking us to do. We normally could be told something, told the plan, and then move on, and you know, that has been in the discovery phase the big part, even for senior leaders, for exec, for all the people, in terms of this. I mean, we talk about it in every organisation in empowerment, but true empowerment, which is, you know, let the people, let the process come up with the answer, and don't sort of get involved when it starts to feel like it's taking ages, or to you it's taking ages. So I think there was definitely something in that, and I talked a bit about the behaviours that came off the back of the purpose. The bit that there was something about this entrepreneurial spirit, as I say, to keep in the organisation, because it keeps the fast pace, the innovation, the new ideas. Just definitely didn't want to get rid of that, but you know, holding that with a bit around slowing down to speed up, which is kind of what this was really, is slow down, take some time, you know, have some patience, be brave, to then go start speeding up and going, wow, okay, we just got there, how did that happen? Because you could go deep and then go faster, and then slow down a little bit, have some thinking time, have some space. So I think in that there was that learning process of, this is the muscle we're going to build as an organisation, which we're going to use as we move forward, which then created the other behaviours from the people again, of the seek opportunity, nurture each other, and simply get going. The simply get going was kind of already there, and we wanted to keep it, but you kind of need to do the other two things at the same time or before. Simply get going, because simply get going might not give you the answer straight away, or it might be the wrong thing because you haven't gone and looked at all the opportunities or understood, you know, the questions that you need to ask your advisors, your clients, or your people before you get there. So that was really key and important.
So in a minute, I'm going to hand over to questions from the audience. So get your questions going, and Becca's sharing the results from the polls, which we'll look at in a second. I want to talk quickly about the wiring. So to get the purpose off the posters, there are posters, they do live on the walls, but beyond that, some of it was in the process, which is very elegantly talked about. So, you know, the process itself being part of the embedding, and you've talked about that conscious muscle you're practicing. What does that mean for leaders in your organisation? What is the advice or the steer that you're giving to leaders about how to use this right now?
Yeah, I mean, we needed to kind of have the conversation with leaders, and they were in part of this anyway, be it the executive or our senior leadership group. And in part, we started with how do we trial 3 different projects that are strategically important to us, that have purpose right at the core. So one was around our office environment coming back from COVID, and kind of creating the right environment for hybrid working. What does that look like with purpose in mind and behaviours in mind? And a senior leadership subgroup took that away and really started to think about that. And again, this was their own learning. This was going out to people and asking questions, not just sending a survey, but actually having conversations with people about what was important to them, what they didn't like, what they did like, and feedback sometimes it's hard to hear, but that was really important for our leaders. The other project was around our rebrand. So again, 3 organisations coming together, taking our rebrand out over the next into 2023. What does that look like from a purpose perspective, externally and internally? This group of leaders thinking about that with purpose at the core. And you know, this is the thread that will go all the way through. So this isn't kind of the colour or the look or the feel. This is about who you become and your reputation. So senior leaders practicing that and starting to think about that. So there was a group of our senior leaders that took that. And then there was another one around our vulnerable customers and how we wanted to look at that, and that group taking that away and really going into a deeper way of thinking about that with purpose in mind. So those with and us helping coach some of that, thinking about their own leadership, purposeful around their own individual purpose, why they're here, and then linking that to the organisation's purpose, was going to be something that our employees were going to go and look and go, is this real or is this not really? Because, you know, if senior leaders or exco aren't role modelling it, then again it just becomes a poster on the wall. So again, we had to allow space at the senior leadership level to do that. Huge amount of learnings come out of that, some of which you know, we would do things differently, but some of which actually right now with the office and the ways of working and future of work, that group is still working on that, and they are really strongly, as much as we might say to someone else when I rotate and think about this, they're like so strong in it and so passionate about it. They're learning all the time about how to cross collaborate and you know, what that purpose looks like for our office and our hybrid working and our future of work. So that was kind of a real interesting journey with our senior leaders, and more to do, you know, as we move forward into further embedding into the organisation.
What do you see, Patrick? What do you see of how these organisations, the leaders, are behaving around this?
Yeah, so as I said, we brought in a very new executive team, and we've expanded the business. We are very ambitious for the business. We want to grow. So, we've increased capacity and capability. So we brought in new leadership. And I suppose, we talk about the purpose as the anchor of the organisation. And when new management leaders come into the business, that's the bit. So, when we talk about, well, what's the organisation like? What does it stand for? That's the purpose. It's a purpose-led organisation. So, in terms of new people coming in, that's kind of, it's part of induction, it's part of day one, it's definitely part of the interview process, because for me, you can have technical ability, but ultimately you have to believe in the organisation. You have to believe in, the purpose. You have to believe in the strategy, because otherwise, as a leader, it will always become really difficult. So that's been new. And in terms of existing, they've been on a journey. They were part of that journey, as Vicki has said. We've tested them in a number of ways, and Emily, you've heard me talk a load of times, but I talk about everyone having a voice a lot, and that means at every level. But certainly from a leadership point of view, it absolutely means that they have the right to challenge each other in terms of behaviours, in terms of purpose. So we are seeing much more in terms of that sort of behaviour. We did a all hands call a couple of weeks ago, where we were talking about hybrid working and getting this balance right between office and home and collaboration. And one of the senior leadership team kind of stood up and spoke up at that and said, yeah, we need to consciously think about what is the best way of conducting this meeting, because at this moment in time, it's a default of, well, let's get a Teams call then. Let's think about it. What is the best way of getting the potential of the next meeting? That might be Teams. There's nothing wrong with that, but it also might be face to face. And I suppose whether consciously or unconsciously, using that purpose in terms of applying it to a life situation.
I was going to go to questions. We've got some great questions on here. So Susanna, I'm just going to call out your question. So Susanna said, what if some people in the organisation don't believe in the purpose and journey? How do you manage that? Well, great question. So
that's a really good question. Well, first of all, absolutely, we have loads of those people. You would always get those in the organisation. So I suppose there's three things for me. One is people adapt, learn at different pace. So just because Emily, you get it on day one doesn't make me bad if I get it on day two. So you have to give people the space, the time to get there, and that might be a long journey. So you need to be patient with people. Secondly, I think that you need to allow people to have the space to question, because to some people in the organisation it was done too, because we didn't have 350 people co-creating it. We had culture club and we had lots of engagement, but for some, when we presented it, it was new. So you have to allow people to be able to question it. And the third is that it's at the core of what we do as a business. And I go back to the point around, I believe you have to work for an organisation where fundamentally you believe in that organisation, you have to believe in the strategy. And I'm not saying because of the purpose, but for some, this might not be the right organisation for us, but for them, sorry, and that's fine. That's fine. Doesn't make us a bad organisation, doesn't make them a bad person. We have people that decided actually it wasn't right for them and went elsewhere, and hopefully they will be hugely successful, because we want people here that are behind the purpose. So and that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, there was definitely some of that along the way, wasn't there? So
Yeah.
do you want to talk about your answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always people that will be cynical or not agree with it or not be aligned. Partly one of my learnings was the energy around that. So what's important is when you go out or when you're starting to create it, there's some people that feel really strongly with, I don't want to be part of this, and I really don't. But then they kind of come back and go, that doesn't work for me. If you're going to do this, do that. So they do care, which is great. It doesn't matter if it's negative, it's good because it's feedback.
Yeah.
So there will be people that don't believe as such, and what needs to happen then is for them to see it and for it to be real. And so senior leaders have a huge part to play on that. As Patrick said, if there is a complete and utter misalignment, then there's a conversation that goes, actually, I want to go and do something different. And that's cool, that's fine. But actually, if it is, I need to see it to believe it, then there is a big part for senior leaders and people leaders and, exco to play that create those moments all the way along. And there will be those, which I've talked about sort of in our kind of survey, it's starting to shift. So those detractors and those passives are a bit like, oh, I'm going to see if this actually is going to work, or I'm not really thinking it is, I don't believe. Starting to move to believe, not everyone, and you'll never get everyone, you just won't. But I think as well, picking those people out and having a real conversation with them is key, and understanding why, because they may have seen or heard, or there can be things that they've been told as to why they don't believe, and that can be complete nonsense or it can be real for them, and you have to hear them. And actually a lot of that is about just listening and hearing it and then having a conversation about it and creating the moment around dialogue and moving forward.
So very deliberate in the culture club. Even then, right, like day dot, we were very, very clear on who we needed in that group, and it wasn't a bunch of people who were brought in. We had to do a huge amount of work on the cynic. We deliberately have the cynic in the room. And I think that having the cynic in the room, have that conversation, so it's not like, hey, you're a believer, you're not. It's like, we want to have the debate, was part of the beauty of what you did. We've got one good question from Rob, and Susanna, I'll come to your question as well. So Rob wants to ask, whether discovering Novia's purpose has given the business a competitive advantage, which you talked about a little bit at the beginning.
Yes, so we believe it has. So I don't think we are getting the full potential of that, but I think that we've done some things. For instance, it's best to use examples. So pricing. So Novia had a pricing policy where it had a kind of pricing that was published, but then it would do deals all over the place in terms of different advisors. And we've now moved to transparent pricing in terms of this is what we charge, and that so it's a very honest conversation. It's much more transparent, and that's about living to our purpose. So that is kind of a competitive advantage, is because our business is about relationships. So our relationships are with advisors, and advisors then advise end customers, and clearly we've got an important obligation to that end customer, but our primary relationship with advisors, and it's an adult relationship. There is no benefit in us thinking, well, we've got one over on the IFA, or they've got there is only interest in us working together and being good for both organisations. And I believe that there's only one way of doing that, in terms of being authentic, being transparent, being open and being honest. And I said this at the beginning, one of the things that we're very much focused on is being very transparent in terms of what we're good at and what we do, but also what we're not so good at and what we don't do. So I think it's starting to give commercial benefit. The other thing that I talked about at the beginning was ultimately we are owned by private equity, and so they will exit at some point. Not for a while. They're very active, good investors. But when we go through a sale process and the next buyer does due diligence, having high engagement scores, low attrition, really engaged people is hugely beneficial. It's hugely beneficial. And I'm sure all the people that are listening are in businesses. If you think about the cost of people leaving, recruitment, training, if you can keep your good people, and you can keep your good people because you are a purpose-led organisation that tries to do the right thing, that's hugely beneficial.
So there's some leading indicators that you're seeing both from internal scores and from your customers, but also there's this vision of being a purpose-led organisation eventually put you in a much stronger financial position anyway. Great. So final question, because I realise we have 3 minutes left. Anonymous, whoever you are, thank you. What, if anything, would you do differently if you were to do this again? Great question.
Well, I suppose not necessarily what we would do differently, but people will be in very different situations to us. So there was a natural coming together. Now's the right time to do it. People will be in much more stable organisations. So the big things for me is bravery. So if you genuinely believe in this, and I think you should. I think it's the right way of running an organisation. Be brave with it. There will never be a right time. There will never be a right time. Oh well, we need to do this project or do this, whatever. So be brave with it, but also you need to be brave with it in terms of sticking with it. Let it meander, because that is the way of getting the most out of it. If you try and control it and you fit it in, when it's appropriate, you just won't get any benefit from it at all. So
you'll end up with a poster.
You will, or a marketing slogan.
Yeah. But you, Vicki, what would you do differently?
I guess there's a lot of energy at the start, and that I think you need to kind of keep that up. So there'll be times where you kind of go, it's embedding and it's happening organically. We talked about that, but I think then you need to turn back up the heat and start going, okay, where is it? Where's the intention? Is that happening over here? Is it? And just question it again. And that can be through either culture clubs, senior leaders, executive teams, others across the organisation. But I think my learning is, don't let it just go. You've got to kind of keep hold and just keep thinking about it in different ways. And the organisation's in a completely different place now, 18 months later. We've been through a lot of things. I'm now thinking, we now need to turn heat up again on this a little bit in terms of just looking at it from a different lens. So I think learning would be just don't just let it happen now from here. You've still got to be intentional. You've still got to check back in. You've still got to keep thinking about it, and keep questioning yourselves. Are you doing enough? Is there places in the organisation where this isn't happening, or that it could happen more? So
if I could give you guys some feedback, what I loved about you guys is you talk about you were out, like you hands up, you weren't hands up guys, you weren't, but you changed your role, right? You thought more like curators, and what you were doing is you were watching the organisation to get off the Gantt chart and actually see what you needed to do next. You were thinking about it more like curators of a movement, and you were architecting from behind the scenes to make sure that it, yes, was doing what the organisation needed it to happen at the time, what you were measuring the reaction, but you were very alive to what's going on. You weren't sitting in a corner oblivious. And that's what it needed that curatorial.
Yeah. But I love it, that analogy of the balcony and the dance, because I think there's something then once you're curating, but then you're on the balcony kind of seeing these things happen, but then you've got to get back in the dance to sort of feel it and say, is it actually working? And then you can go back up and go, how does it look in the bigger picture? But keep doing that is yeah, important.
So I'm just looking at the time, we are 1 minute over. Thank you very much, audience, for coming. This has been a wonderful chat for me. Hopefully it was for you too. What we will do now is we will package this all up and deliver it back out to you. And I want to capture the questions, and I'll make sure the ones that didn't get answered do get answered, and we'll send them back out to attendees. In 1 minute, how would you wrap up this journey? How would you summarize it? And what is your one big piece of advice to everyone listening?
I mean, the biggest part for me is I've enjoyed it. The journey for our people has been hugely satisfying. It's just been amazing to see what has happened to the organisation, the cultural change, the difference in the business today to when we took it over is just a totally different business, and that purpose has been really central to that. So that's been exciting. One piece of advice, I said it about 5 times, just be brave with it. Just be brave.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you can get quite serious about these things, and actually it's important to just have fun and enjoy it along the way, because some of it is scary, and is it going to work, is it not, and you're trialing it and it's experimental, but have fun. Don't take it all too seriously, just go with it a bit, and smile a bit through it. Really important. Yeah, exactly. And then one big piece is that bravery and just jumping in, really just jump in. Don't try and have a full plan, it will never come together really, but have an intention and be brave, get behind it.
Well, thank you very much, you've been brilliant. Thank you for all your wisdom. We will note it all down, package it up and send it out to everyone. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. We'll see you again next time.